toward the end of my time in Duktan, I had another really interesting experience. Lieutenant Nyan, Major Diem's kind of chief aide, came over and said, I'm going out to see something really remarkable. It's here in this village. You want to come with me? So I said, okay. Tonight, we go out, go walking down this kind of tranquil setting, palm trees, little dirt path, houses made of thatch. And he said, we're going to see an exorcism. And that there is an individual who lives in this village who is renowned with his ability to drive evil spirits out of people. And tonight he's doing a ritual. And so we're invited in, and once again have sort of front row seats, sitting on little benches. And here in front of me is a young Vietnamese woman. She's dressed all in sort of pink, loose-fitting, what we would call pajamas, but clothing. And she's sitting on the floor in the lotus position with her legs crossed, her hands like this, and she's doing repetitive bowing and praying like this, nonstop. In front of her is a table on which there's a bottle of liquid, a couple of cups, and a clay pot with a cover on it. Then a few minutes later, this sort of tall, thin, not terribly well-dressed man, whose home it is, comes out from a little back room, and he comes up to the table. And he then takes the lid off this jar, and then pulls his tongue out, takes a knife, and starts rubbing the sharp edge of the knife on his tongue, causing it to bleed. And as it bleeds, he then catches the blood in a little cup, mixes this liquid out of a teapot in there, and drinks this mixture of sort of tea or hot water and his blood. And it's explained to me by Lieutenant Nyan that what he is doing is that in that jar that had been covered, ceramic jar, was the spirit of a man from the village who was known to people, who had passed away. He had been the local pharmacist. And that what was happening now, through the process of cutting his tongue, taking the blood and the hot water, the tea, and drinking it, this was how the spirit of this man, this dead man, was entering his body. And he would be reciting things, saying things, like chanting things. And Lieutenant Yun said, and people will tell you they can hear his voice change. And those who knew the dead man, whose spirit there, will tell you his voice now sounds like that man. So this was pretty out of the world stuff. He then is going to do a ritual with this young woman who's on the floor, still doing her praying mode. And he comes over and takes a blanket and covers her head and body, so she's still doing this. He goes back behind the table, and he has like a cotton ball at the end of a wire mesh, and he lights it on fire. So it's burning like a candle would burn. And then he takes this bottle of clear liquid and pours some into the cup and drinks it, or drinks it into his mouth. He doesn't swallow it. He's got a mouthful of this clear liquid, which is explained to me is that it's rice wine. It's like pure ethanol. And holding the lighted cotton ball in front of him, he spits out all of the rice wine, and it turns into a fireball that engulfs this young woman with the blanket over her head. I'm on the other side of her, and I can feel the heat, and I'm repelled by it. It's stunning how hot it is. It's momentary. She's still praying. She doesn't move. And he does it again, another fireball. And it's explained to me that he's loosening the bad spirit that occupies her body. An exorcism is a struggle between two spirits, a good spirit and a bad spirit. The good spirit, if it's stronger than the bad spirit, will have the power to loosen and eventually drive out the bad spirit. But if it's not strong enough, it doesn't work. The bad spirit remains. And then he comes over and stands beside her, and he picks up a flat board. And I'm just a foot or two away from her. And he takes this board and swings it like he's hitting a home run and hits her flat on the back as hard as he can with what's like part of a 2x4 or so. And you hear this thud and this expulsion of air from her with a sound like, ooh! And then he does it again. Ooh! And this is, if it's worked, if he's loosened it with the flame and physically driven it from her body, she'll start to get better. So that concluded that part of the process, the procedure. Her family picks her up, taking her out. They're all hopeful. I don't know in the end if it worked or not. But other people are bringing their children up, sort of get prophylactic treatment. You know, one woman says, "Oh, my little boy here, he's starting to get sick," and so the exorcist would take some of the liquid in his mouth and sort of spray a little in the face of the kid. The next day, I watched him try to do an exorcism with scalding hot water outside, ladling hot boiling water onto the back of a woman who was possessed, but never scarred her, never burned her. But yes, so seeing exorcisms was so incredible. But what's interesting is that years and years later, I would write about how Norman Borlaug exorcised the curse of the Bambino from Fenway Park and allowed the Boston Red Sox to win the World Series. But that's a story for later.